Okay, so the first film narrative that I will be analysing is the film called The Shallows. Now, the film called The Shallows follows Todorov's narrative structure, so it's got quite a linear format. So, to begin with, it has the equilibrium. Okay, the equilibrium is when she's talking to her family on FaceTime about how she misses them, but how she's really enjoying doing the surfing in Australia on this beach, because the film is all about sharks and shark attacks and her being in these tense moments of escaping from the sharks. It's very different to films like Jaws, but it's still very tense. So the equilibrium is demonstrated when she's onto the phone to her family saying everything's okay and I'm really enjoying surfing in Australia. She meets two guys on the beach who she surfs with, and they seem to have a really fun time. It shows them enjoying themselves, and essentially this tells the viewer that everything's okay. Now, the disruption of the equilibrium is, so the recognition of the equilibrium being disrupted is further enhanced by the fact that she swims to this little island surrounded by nothing but rough sea and a shark circling it. Now, a narrative technique is used here called dramatic tension. Because we can see that she's in this sort of alienated, isolated world, and it builds tension for the audience as we feel empathy towards her. Now, when other people come to the beach, they try to save her. The shark kills many people, and we immediately think that she is going to be killed. This builds dramatic tension. Okay, so they're the narrative techniques. Now moving back to Todorov. Obviously, when she kills the shark, this is a highly significant moment because this is kind of the climax. Now, after she kills the shark, she arrives back to the beach, her friends are there, there's an ambulance there, there's people around her, it looks like she's about to die, but they save her, and then there's the return to the equilibrium. She goes back on the phone to her parents, and she says how everything's okay, and she now goes back home and everything's all right. Now, she finishes up on the beach. She starts on the beach. So essentially, the narrative is quite simple as it follows a cyclical narrative. Okay, so following on in terms of narrative techniques, we have dramatic tension, but we also have the use of false telegraphing here. Because as she's on this rock and the shark's going round her and two people have been killed that have tried to save her, we automatically get the impression that, hang on, she's going to be killed as well. But this is false telegraphing, so of course she doesn't get killed. But the representation of what's happening on the screen gives us the impression that she is going to get killed, but she doesn't. Okay. The false telegraphing looks like she will get killed, but the interweaving storyline is that she kills the enormous shark. Okay, so again, just to finish with, there's a few more narrative techniques which are used throughout this whole film. Now, as you've probably got the impression from what I've been saying, the actual narrative of the film is quite straightforward. However, it's the way the story is told which keeps you intrigued all the time, because obviously the genre is a horror, so the aim of the whole film is to keep you scared and on the edge of your seat. Dramatic irony is used throughout most of the film, as we as the audience know that the shark has killed the imaginary characters in the film, and the girl is dying as she's excessively bleeding. The other characters in the film don't know that the girl is stranded on this rock excessively bleeding. They don't know that these characters have been killed, so therefore we know something that the characters in the film don't know. This puts us in quite an intriguing position. The dangling cause is also used throughout the whole film, because we know for ages that she's trapped out on this island, on this fragile buoy that seems to be breaking because the shark keeps hitting into it, as the shark's main objective is to kill her. And we know that eventually she's going to get knocked off this buoy and there's going to be a fight between her and the shark. However, this doesn't happen. It happens after probably about 5 or 6 narrative obstacles. So therefore, that event of being knocked off the buoy is prolonged. This makes it more intriguing. There we go, a dangling cause. Okay. The second film that I'll be talking about in terms of narrative techniques is Silence of the Lambs. Firstly, the first sort of really significant thing that makes this story engaging from an audience's point of view is the fact that the story is told from points of view of different characters. The point of view from where the story is told changes from character to character depending on the narrative obstacles. For example, sometimes the story is told by Hannibal Lecter, sometimes it's told by the police, etc, etc. You get the idea. This makes it more intriguing as we're getting different insights as to what different things are happening. Now, lots of narrative obstacles occur. This is a key thing in making the story engaging. Like Hannibal Lecter revealing false information and manipulating different characters, especially Clarice. This is a narrative obstacle which is repeated over and over again, but creates that dramatic tension. So, as I said, there's a lot of narrative obstacles which make it really intriguing. Also, what makes Silence of the Lambs especially effective is the interweaving storylines. This happens all the time, but I'm going to give an example of one interweaving storyline. His escape from the prison becomes an interweaving storyline, as there is now the chase to find Hannibal Lecter, but there's also the chase to find Buffalo Bill. This is great because it gives the audience more than one thing to think about, and the scenes can go between one thing to another thing and leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger and then come back to it. And that's what's really clever about the way the narrative is told. And this sort of works well with the way that the characters are telling different parts of the stories. We're getting different perspectives. Dramatic irony is also used in Silence of the Lambs, and so is the dangling cause. Now, dramatic irony is used as we as the audience know that when Hannibal Lecter escapes, we know exactly where he is. There's many scenes telling us where he's going, what he's doing, who's he manipulating, but the characters, e.g. Clarice and the other police, don't know where Hannibal Lecter is. They're searching for him. This puts the audience in quite a clever position, as we know where Lecter is, and we know where the police are, and we know where the police are going wrong in trying to find Hannibal Lecter. Makes it all more tense, makes it more atmospheric. Dangling cause is also used, as Lecter, he keeps wanting to escape. He keeps wanting to escape this prison, but because he's got trying to think of so many different things on his mind, the idea of escaping is prolonged. So he doesn't escape in scene 1 or scene 2 or scene 3, but we know he's trying to escape. But this idea of escaping the prison is prolonged. There we go, the dangling cause is used. Okay, just to finally finish, another narrative technique which is used in Silence of the Lambs, which I can't think is being used in any other narrative, is the idea that there's no exposition. So the exposition normally is the stage at the beginning of the narrative which establishes the characters, who they are, the relationships, but this doesn't happen in Silence of the Lambs. We go straight into the narrative, straight into the action. The effect of having no exposition is that the characters like Buffalo Bill, we don't see them until about midway through the narrative. So we hear all these things about Buffalo Bill, which makes it quite intriguing. Oh, I wonder what he's like. But we don't actually get introduced to him until about halfway through the narrative. This makes it quite tense and quite intriguing. There we go, my video on my 2 favourite narratives.